The United Nations is urging European Union countries to cooperate to help thousands of migrants stuck on the island of Lampedusa. Close to 7,000 people have arrived on the island in recent days, a number that exceeds Lampedusa's population. Many have since been moved to the mainland. The UN says EU countries must share responsibility for housing refugees to take the pressure off Italy.
Lining up in the midday heat, waiting to be transferred to Sicily or the mainland. The migrants arriving by boat on the Italian island of Lampedusa have high hopes for their futures in Europe.
I will go to France. I want to go to France to live out my dreams. I want to help out my family, get them out of poverty. Football is my passion, that's why I came here.
But this dream may prove hard to fulfill. France's Interior Minister recently announced plans to seal the country's border in an effort to reduce the number of people crossing into France. Italy's far-right Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, who is well known for his criticism of the EU, condemned what he called a lack of solidarity from other European countries.
I said it at the beginning. What's happening in Lampedusa is the death of Europe. Death because Italy is alone.
Aid workers and local authorities on Lampedusa are struggling to provide sufficient food, medical care and accommodation for the new arrivals. Many of whom are now sleeping on makeshift beds outside the reception centre, which has a capacity of only 400 people. And the conditions are proving too much for many. Italy's right-wing government has pledged €45 million to Lampedusa to help the island better cope with the migrant arrivals, while its call for more help from other EU countries continues to go unheard.
Gerhard Knaus is director of the European Stability Initiative, a think tank. He used to advise the German government on migration. Welcome back to DW. What did you think when you heard of the huge numbers of migrants just arriving in Lampedusa the past couple of days?
Well, the bigger context is that nothing the EU has done, nothing that Italy has done in the last few years has really worked. What we are seeing is a record number of people crossing the central Mediterranean. If this trend continues, it will be more people this year than in the record year 2016. We are seeing that the attempts to stop rescue boats, NGO rescue boats, completely missed the point. These people are now arriving with their boats directly in Italy. They don't need to be rescued. We've also seen that the migration agreement that was reached by Italy and the European Commission President a few weeks ago has actually made things worse. More people have left Tunisia since the agreement, and human rights violations in Tunisia have actually intensified, which means that more sub-Saharan Africans had an interest to try to flee with smugglers to Europe. So current EU strategy is not working, and it would be very good to finally have a realistic and serious debate on what might work.
Tell me more about German strategy. That's where you've worked in an advisory role. Germany recently stopped accepting migrants arriving in Italy under that European solidarity plan. Where is the solidarity in that?
I mean, this is one of these red herrings, one of these totally meaningless debates. Germany last year...
Why is that meaningless?
Because solidarity will not be increased by transferring 1,000 people from Italy to Germany, when last year Italy gave protection to 25,000 people and Germany gave protection to 150,000 people. People distribute themselves. If Italy takes the people from Lampedusa to Italy, they will not stay in Italy. Everyone knows that. And what we've been seeing in these debates on distributing asylum seekers or distributing refugees, if you actually have a system that would be fair and distribute them according to some indicators, in most years in the last decade, people would have been taken from the north of Europe to the south.
Okay, so you say the system...
asylum applications than France.
You say the system's broken, basically, but the system at the moment
is broken and will not
it's
be
waving people through from
bureaucratic...
countries like Italy and Greece, isn't it?
Well, anybody can leave Italy to go to Switzerland, France, or Germany. The idea that France will stop them at the border, and again, this is pure populism. France has had border controls with Italy since 2015 November. In the 4 years after they introduced border controls on the land border, which is 300 kilometers, in those 4 years of border controls, the number of asylum applications in France doubled. The border controls didn't work inside the EU either. So let's have a serious debate. People who reach Italy will not stay in Italy, and they will not be stopped by some token controls on the German or French border. What we need is a way to stop people getting into these boats that doesn't rely on immoral deals with Libya or Tunisia. And the only way to do that is to have partners, safe countries on the other side of the Mediterranean, to whom people can be taken so that they have no incentive to get into the boats, but that their asylum claims, if they claim asylum, can still be processed. And that requires serious offers to countries to have an interest to cooperate. Otherwise, we will be stuck in the same tragic status quo where thousands of people are actually dying.
Yeah, it sure does sound like that. Gerhard Knauss, thank you very much for giving us your views, a former advisor to the German government on migration, talking about the situation on Lampedusa at the moment.
And DW correspondent Christine Mundwer joins us now from the island of Lampedusa. Christine, what can you tell us about the conditions on the island right now?
Hi, Anya. When we arrived on the island this morning, we caught some of the movement. If you can see the action behind me, this is the migrants now being moved from the island. And as we understand it, they are being taken to different parts of Italy. They have cleared the island of women and children. You mostly have men who are remaining. We've been talking to a lot of them. They told us about their journey here, mostly from Tunisia and Libya, having spent about 2 days in the water and then made it onto the island. Many of them very relieved to be in Italy. They say the conditions and the treatment they experienced in Tunisia and Libya were atrocious. They're relieved. They have ambitions, big dreams. I've spoken to teenagers here, or people who say they're teenagers, who want to play football for Italian clubs. Some who have relatives in Germany who sent money over to get them to the island, who want to go join their relatives. So overall, they've told us that the Italian authorities have treated them well. There have been conditions where, of course, food is scarce and people getting into scuffles. But beyond that, and of course, having to sleep outside, there's not much capacity. But these are conditions they would have experienced out in Tunisia and Libya as well.
What about the residents of Lampedusa? How do they feel about what's happening in their home, about seeing so many arrivals?
I tell you what, Anya, I've not really had much time to go into the island and talk to the residents, but I have spoken to the migrants here who dared venture into the island. Of course, they were not allowed to do so. They were told to stay within the area, but so many people have obviously overwhelmed the authorities and some were able to get out. They told me they left because they were trying to go and get food and ask for food. They said they approached people who did offer them food very kindly. So they said they didn't receive any hostile treatment. Of course, we've not spoken to everybody on the island about how they feel, but the migrants who encountered some of the locals say they, by and large, were well received and even helped with food and water.
Could you tell us a bit more about the EU's response to Lampedusa's plea for assistance in this situation?
Well, we did hear from the Commission President. We heard from, as well as the Commissioner as well for Migration and Internal Affairs from the European Union. Of course, they are aware of the situation and they have pledged a European response. But right now, countries like France and Germany are particularly receiving a lot of heat for their perceived not helping in the situation by fortifying their borders and refusing to take on some people. But as we can see it from here, this is pretty much the Italians are on their own in this. As I mentioned earlier, the migrants are being relocated to other parts of Italy. So nobody is yet going to another country. So this is very much a challenge for the Italian authorities. We've not yet seen how the Commission will come through or the European Union institutions just yet. But we know that help has been pledged and should be on their way. There has been engagement as well.
Christine Mundwer reporting from Lampedusa. Thanks so much, Christine.
Well, for more on the situation in Lampedusa, Lucia Gennari is a human rights lawyer based in Rome. Welcome to DW News. So tell us, what are you hearing about the conditions on the island?
What I hear and I see through the people I know who are there is a situation that escalated indeed, but it's going on since several months already. And has not been managed by the government as the structural phenomena that it is since now more than 15 years in Lampedusa. So now there are around 4,000 people because some of the people who arrived in the last days has been transferred. But this is a condition that I saw myself in August, for example, in a lower scale, and that has been dealt with improvisation, I would say, in a situation where I cannot agree on the fact that Italy is alone. The European Union and the other countries are not non-existing, I would say.
So are you saying the Italian authorities are not fulfilling their responsibility to manage and process the arrival of people, of migrants arriving on the island of Lampedusa?
Yes. Yes, because the resources that have been put in place have been increased slightly, and there's a different management of the transfers of people who arrived to Lampedusa to the mainland, but all the rest is staying the same since years. And we had already years like 2015, 16, when the numbers were similar to the one we are seeing right now. And this didn't happen.
Tell us, what strategies do you recommend for improving conditions and the treatment of migrants in say, the crowded reception centre that we're seeing there in Lampedusa?
Well, actually, what's happening since many years in the reception, let's say, center, it's called hotspot in Lampedusa. It's something that is partially what was recommended by the EU Commission to deal with irregular arrivals, if we can say that. And it's a system that should be made to differentiate how legally this is concretely made. It's a question to differentiate between so-called genuine asylum seekers and irregular migrants. This through procedures that are actually dealt in an informal way, and that in a way that exclude from the asylum procedure a lot of people. All this happens in a place, the hotspot, the migration center, which is thought for about 300 people, and it's most of the time exceeding this number. The condition of this place is also considered by the European Court of Human Rights as a treatment which is inhuman and degrading. And this is happening since years and years, no? Also without arriving to the numbers that we are seeing. And what happened basically is that this system, the hotspot system, which should regulate a bit the arrivals through identification and channeling of the different categories of migrants in the different procedure, asylum or return. This is collapsing now. So the hotspot, which was used also informally for detaining people, not for hosting them, right, but for informally detaining, now it's open, and procedures is not clear what are they doing now. Okay. And this is what I want to underline is that it's something foreseeable in a way.
Human rights lawyer Lucia Gennari, thank you for joining us on DW News today.
Thank you.